Million Word Reading Project, Collection 1, Book 3, Jataka Tales, produced by Million Word Reading Project Workshop. One. The Monkey and the Crocodile. A monkey lived in a great tree on a river bank. In the river there were many crocodiles. A crocodile watched the monkeys for a long time, and one day she said to her son, "My son, get one of those monkeys for me. I want the heart of a monkey to eat." "How can I catch a monkey?" asked the little crocodile. "I do not travel on land, and the monkey does not go into the water." "Use your head, and you'll find a way," said the mother. And the little crocodile thought and thought. At last he said to himself, "I know what I'll do. I'll get that monkey that lives in a big tree on the river bank. He wishes to go across the river to the island where the fruit is so ripe." So the crocodile swam to the tree where the monkey lived. But he was a stupid crocodile. "Oh, monkey," he called, "come with me over to the island where the fruit is so ripe." "How can I go with you?" asked the monkey. "I do not swim." "No, but I do." "I will take you over on my back," said the crocodile. The monkey was greedy and wanted the ripe fruit, so he jumped down on the crocodile's back. "Off we go," said the crocodile. "This is a fine ride you are giving me," said the monkey. "Do you think so?" "Well, how do you like this?" asked the crocodile as he dived into the water. "Oh, don't!" cried the monkey as he went under the water. He was afraid to let go, and he did not know what to do under the water. When the crocodile came up, the monkey asked, "Why did you take me underwater, crocodile?" "I am going to kill you by keeping you underwater," answered the crocodile. "My mother wants monkey heart to eat, and I'm going to take yours to her." "I wish you had told me you wanted my heart," said the monkey, "then I might have brought it with me." "How strange," said the stupid crocodile. "Do you mean to say that you left your heart back there in the tree?" "That is what I mean," said the monkey. "If you want my heart, we must go back to the tree and get it. But we are so near the island where the ripe fruit is, please take me there first." "No, monkey," said the crocodile. "I'll take you straight back to your tree. Never mind the ripe fruit. Get your heart and bring it to me at once. Then we'll think of going to the island." "Very well," said the monkey. But no sooner had he jumped onto the bank of the river than he ran up into the tree. From the highest branches he called down to the crocodile in the water below, "My heart is up here. If you want it, come for it, come for it." The monkey soon moved away from that tree. He wanted to get away from the crocodile so that he might live in peace. But the crocodile found him, far down the river, living in another tree. In the middle of the river was an island covered with fruit trees. Halfway between the bank of the river and the island, a large rock rose out of the water. The monkey could jump to the rock and then to the island. The crocodile watched the monkey crossing from the bank of the river to the rock and then to the island. He thought to himself, "The monkey will stay on the island all day, and I'll catch him on his way home at night." The monkey had a fine dinner, while the crocodile swam about, watching him all day. Toward night the crocodile crawled out of the water and lay on the rock, perfectly still. When it grew dark among the trees, the monkey started for home. He ran down to the river bank, and there he stopped. "What is the matter with the rock?" the monkey thought to himself. "I never saw it so high before. The crocodile is lying on it." But he went to the edge of the water and called, "Hello, rock." No answer. Then he called again, "Hello, rock." 3 times the monkey called, and then he said, "Why is it, friend rock, that you do not answer me tonight?" "Oh," said the stupid crocodile to himself, "the rock answers the monkey at night. I'll have to answer for the rock this time." So he answered, "Yes, monkey." "What is it?" The monkey laughed and said, "Oh, it's you, crocodile, is it?" "Yes," said the crocodile. "I am waiting here for you. I am going to eat you." "You have caught me in a trap this time," said the monkey. "There is no other way for me to go home. Open your mouth wide so I can jump right into it." The monkey jumped. Now the monkey well knew that when crocodiles open their mouths wide, they shut their eyes. While the crocodile lay on the rock with his mouth wide open and his eyes shut, the monkey jumped. But not into his mouth. Oh, no. He landed on the top of the crocodile's head and then jumped quickly to the bank. Up he ran into his tree. When the crocodile saw the trick the monkey had played on him, he said, "Monkey, you are very clever. You know no fear. I'll let you alone after this." "Thank you, Crocodile, but I shall be on the watch for you just the same," said the monkey. 2. How the turtle saved his own life. The king once had a lake made in the courtyard for the young princes to play in. They swam about in it and sailed their boats on it. One day the king told them he had asked the men to put some fishes into the lake. Off the boys ran to see the fishes. Now, along with the fishes, there was a turtle. The boys were delighted with the fishes, but they had never seen a turtle, and they were afraid of it, thinking it was a devil. They ran back to their father, crying, "There is a devil on the bank of the lake." The king ordered his men to catch the devil, and to bring it to the palace. When the turtle was brought in, the boys cried and ran away. The king was very fond of his sons, so he ordered the men who had brought the turtle to kill it. "How shall we kill it?" they asked. "Break it into pieces," said someone. "Bake it in hot coals," said another. "Throw the thing into the lake." So one plan after another was spoken of. Then an old man who had always been afraid of the water said, "Throw the thing into the lake where it flows out over the rocks into the river. Then it will surely be killed." When the turtle heard what the old man said, he put out his head and asked, "Friend, what have I done that you should do such a terrible thing as that to me? The other plans were bad enough, but to throw me into the lake. Don't speak of such a cruel thing." When the king heard what the turtle said, he told his men to take the turtle at once and throw it into the lake. The turtle laughed to himself as he slid away down the river to his old home. "Good," he said. "Those people do not know how safe I am in the water." 3. The turtle who couldn't stop talking. The turtle lived in a pond at the foot of a hill. 2 young wild geese, looking for food, saw the turtle and talked with him. The next day the geese came again to visit the turtle, and they became great friends. "Friend Turtle," the geese said one day, "we have a beautiful home far away. We are going to fly back to it tomorrow. It will be a long but pleasant journey. Will you go with us?" "How could I go with you? I have no wings," said the turtle. "Oh, we will take you, if only you can keep your mouth shut and say not a word to anybody," they said. "I can do that," said the turtle. "Do take me with you. I will do exactly as you wish." So the next day the geese brought a stick and they held the ends of it. "Now take the middle of this in your mouth, and don't say a word until we reach home," they said. The geese then flew into the air, with the turtle between them, holding fast to the stick. The village children saw the 2 geese flying along with the turtle and cried out, "Oh, see the turtle up in the air! Look at the geese carrying a turtle by a stick! Did you ever see anything more ridiculous in your life?" The turtle looked down and began to say, "Well, and if my friends carry me, what business is that of yours?" When he let go, he fell dead at the feet of the children. As the 2 geese flew on, they heard the people say, when they came to see the poor turtle, that fellow could not keep his mouth shut. He had to talk, and so lost his life. 4. How the monkey saved his troop. A mango tree grew on the bank of a great river. The fruit fell from some of the branches of this tree into the river, and from other branches it fell on the ground. Every night a troop of monkeys gathered the fruit that lay on the ground and climbed up into the tree to get the mangoes, which were large and juicy. One day the king of the country stood on the bank of this same river, but many miles below where the mango tree grew. The king was watching the fishermen with their nets. As they drew in their nets, the fishermen found not only fishes, but also a strange fruit. They went to the king with the strange fruit. "What is this?" asked the king. "We do not know, O king," they said. "Call the foresters," said the king. "They will know what it is." So they called the foresters, and they said that it was a mango. "Is it good to eat?" asked the king. The foresters said it was very good. So the king cut the mango and gave some to the princes. And he ate some of it himself. He liked it very much, and they all liked it. Then the king said to the foresters, "Where does the mango tree grow?" The foresters told him that it grew on the river bank many miles farther up the river. "Let us go and see the tree and get some mangoes," said the king. So he had many rafts joined together, and they went up the river until they came to the place where the mango tree grew. The foresters said, "O king, this is the mango tree." "We will land here," said the king, and they did so. The king and all the men with him gathered the mangoes that lay on the ground under the tree. They all liked them so well that the king said, "Let us stay here tonight and gather more fruit in the morning." So they had their supper under the trees and then lay down to sleep. When all was quiet, the chief of the monkeys came with his troop. All the mangoes on the ground had been eaten, so the monkeys jumped from branch to branch, picking and eating mangoes, and talking to one another. They made so much noise that they woke up the king. He called his men, saying, "Stand under the mango tree and shoot the monkeys as they come down to the ground to get away. Then in the morning we shall have monkey's flesh as well as mangoes to eat." The monkeys saw the men standing around with their arrows ready to shoot. Fearing death, the monkeys ran to their chief, saying, "O chief, the men stand around the tree ready to shoot us. What shall we do?" They shook with fear. The chief said, "Don't be afraid, I will save you. Stay where you are until I call you." The monkeys were comforted, for he had always helped them whenever they had needed help. Then the chief of the monkeys ran out on the branch of the mango tree that hung out over the river. The long branches of the tree across the river did not quite meet the branch he stood on. The chief said to himself, "If the monkeys try to jump across from this tree to that, some of them will fall into the water and drown. I must save them, but how am I to do it? I know what I shall do. I shall make a bridge of my back." So the chief reached across and took hold of the longest branch of a tree across the river. He called, "Come, monkeys. Run out on this branch, step on my back, and then run along the branch of the other tree." The monkeys did as the chief told them to do. They ran along the branch, stepped on his back, then ran along the branch of the other tree. They swung themselves down to the ground, and away they went back to their home. The king saw all that was done by the chief and his troop. "That big monkey," said the king to his men, "saved the whole troop. I will see to it that he is taken care of the rest of his life." And the king kept his promise. 5. Beauty and Brownie. 2 deer named Beauty and Brownie lived with their father and mother and great herds of deer in the forest. One day their father called them to him and said, "The deer in the forest are always in danger when the corn is ripening in the fields. It will be best for you to go away for a while, and you must each take your own herd of deer with you." "What is the danger, father?" they asked. "When the deer go into the fields to eat the corn, they get caught in the traps the men set there," the father said. "Many deer are caught in these traps every year." "Will you go away with us?" Brownie said. "No, your mother and I, and some of the other old deer will stay here in the forest," said the father. "There will be food enough for us, but there is not enough for you and your herds. You must lead your herds up into the high hills where there is plenty of food for you, and stay there until the crops are all cut. Then you can bring your herds back here. But you must be careful. You must travel by night, because the hunters will see you if you go by day. And you must not take your herd near the villages where hunters live." So Beauty and Brownie and their herds set out. Beauty traveled at night and did not go near any villages, and at last brought his herd safely to the high hills. Not a single deer did Beauty lose. But Brownie forgot what his father had said. Early each morning he started off with his herd, going along all through the day. When he saw a village, he led his herd right past it. Again and again hunters saw the herd, and they killed many of the deer in Brownie's herd. When crops had been cut, the deer started back to the forest. Beauty led all his herd back, but stupid Brownie traveled in the daytime, and again he took his herd past the villages. When he reached the forest, only a few were left of all Brownie's herd. 6. The Merchant of Seri. There was once a merchant of Seri who sold brass and tinware. He went from town to town with another man who also sold brass and tinware. This second man was greedy. When they went into a town, they divided the streets between them. Each man went up and down the streets he had chosen, calling, "Tinware for sale. Brass for sale." People came out to their doorsteps and bought or traded with them. In one house there lived a poor old woman and her granddaughter. The family had once been rich, but now the only thing they had left of all their riches was a gold bowl. The grandmother did not know it was a gold bowl, but she had kept this because her husband used to eat out of it in the old days. It stood on a shelf among the other pots and pans, and was not often used. The greedy merchant passed this house, calling, "Buy my water jars. Buy my pans." The granddaughter said, "Oh, grandmother, do buy something for me." "My dear," said the old woman, "we are too poor to buy anything. I have not anything to trade, even." "Grandmother, see what the merchant will give for the old bowl. We do not use that, and perhaps he will take it and give us something we want for it." The old woman called the merchant and showed him the bowl, saying, "Will you take this, sir, and give the little girl here something for it?" The greedy man took the bowl and scratched its side with a needle. Thus he found that it was a gold bowl. He hoped he could get it for nothing, so he said, "What is this worth?" "Not even a halfpenny." He threw the bowl on the ground and went away. Soon after, the other merchant passed the house. For it was agreed that either merchant might go through any street which the other had left. He called, "Buy my water jars. Buy my tinware. Buy my brass." The little girl heard him, and begged her grandmother to see what he would give for the bowl. "My child," said the grandmother, "the merchant who was just here threw the bowl on the ground and went away. I have nothing else to offer in trade." "But, grandmother," said the girl, "that was a bad-tempered man. This one looks pleasant. Ask him. Perhaps he'll give some little tin dish." "Call him, then, and show it to him," said the old woman. As soon as the merchant took the bowl in his hands, he knew it was of gold. He said, "All that I have here is not worth so much as this bowl. It is a gold bowl. I am not rich enough to buy it. But, sir, a merchant who passed here a few moments ago threw it on the ground, saying it was not worth a halfpenny, and he went away," said the grandmother. "It was worth nothing to him. If you value it, take it and give the little girl some dish she likes for it." But the merchant would not do that. He gave the woman all the money he had, and all his wares. "Give me just 8 pennies, he said. So he took the pennies, and left. Going quickly to the river, he paid a boatman the 8 pennies to take him across the river. Soon the greedy merchant went back to the house, where he had seen the gold bowl, and said, "Bring that bowl to me, and I will give you something for it." "No," said the grandmother. "You said the bowl was worthless, but another merchant has paid a great price for it, and taken it away. It is a gold bowl." Then the greedy merchant was angry, crying out, "I have lost a small fortune because of this other man. That bowl was of gold." He ran down to the riverside, and, seeing the other merchant in the boat out in the river, he called, "Hello, boatman. Stop your boat." But the man in the boat said, "Don't stop." So he reached the city on the other side of the river, and lived well for a time on the money the bowl brought him. 7. The Foolish Rabbit. Once upon a time, a rabbit was asleep under a palm tree. All at once he woke up and thought, "What if the earth should break up? What then would become of me?" At that moment, some monkeys dropped a coconut. It fell down on the ground just behind the rabbit. Hearing the noise, the rabbit said to himself, "The earth is all breaking up." And he jumped up and ran just as fast as he could, without even looking back to see what made the noise. Another rabbit saw him running, and called after him, "What are you running so fast for?" "Don't ask me," he cried. But the other rabbit ran after him, begging to know what was the matter. Then the first rabbit said, "Don't you know? The earth is all breaking up." And on he ran, and the second rabbit ran with him. The next rabbit they met ran with them when he heard that the earth was all breaking up. One rabbit after another joined them, until there were hundreds of rabbits running as fast as they could go. They passed a deer, and called out to him that the earth was all breaking up. The deer then ran with them. The deer called to a fox to come along because the earth was all breaking up. On and on they ran, and an elephant joined them. At last the lion saw the animals running, and heard their cry that the earth was all breaking up. He thought there must be some mistake, so he ran to the foot of a hill in front of them and roared 3 times. This stopped them, for they knew the voice of the king of beasts, and they feared him. "Why are you running so fast?" asked the lion. "O King Lion," they answered him, "the earth is all breaking up." "Who saw it breaking up?" asked the lion. "I didn't," said the elephant. "Ask the fox, he told me about it." "I didn't," said the fox. "The rabbits told me about it," said the deer. One after another of the rabbits said, "I did not see it, but another rabbit told me about it." At last the lion came to the rabbit who had first said the earth was all breaking up. "Is it true that the earth is all breaking up?" the lion asked. "Yes, O lion, it is," said the rabbit. "I was asleep under a palm tree. I woke up and thought, what would become of me if the earth should all break up? At that very moment, I heard the sound of the earth breaking up, and I ran away." Then said the lion, "You and I will go back to the place where the earth began to break up, and see what is the matter." So the lion put the little rabbit on his back, and away they went like the wind. The other animals waited for them at the foot of the hole. The rabbit told the lion when they were near the place where he slept, and the lion saw just where the rabbit had been sleeping. He saw, too, the coconut that had fallen to the ground nearby. Then the lion said to the rabbit, "It must have been the sound of the coconut falling to the ground that you heard. You foolish rabbit." And the lion ran back to the other animals, and told them all about it. If it had not been for the wise king of beasts, they might be running still. 8. The ox who won the money. Long ago a man owned a very strong ox. The owner was so proud of his ox that he boasted to every man he met about how strong his ox was. One day the owner went into a village and said to the men there, "I will pay 1,000 pieces of silver if my strong ox cannot draw a line of 100 wagons." The men laughed and said, "Very well, bring your ox, and we will tie 100 wagons in a line and see your ox draw them along." So the man brought his ox into the village. A crowd gathered to see the sight. The 100 carts were in line, and the strong ox was yoked to the first wagon. Then the owner whipped his ox, and said, "Get up, you rascal! Get along, you rascal!" But the ox had never been talked to in that way, and he stood still. Neither the blows nor the hard name could make him move. "Get along, you rascal!" At last the poor man paid his money, and went sadly home. There he threw himself on his bed and cried, "Why did that strong ox act so? Many a time he has moved heavy loads easily. Why did he shame me before all those people?" At last he got up and went about his work. When he went to feed the ox that night, the ox turned to him and said, "Why did you whip me today? You never whipped me before. Why did you call me rascal? You never called me hard names before." Then the man said, "I will never treat you badly again. I am sorry I whipped you and called you names. I will never do so any more. Forgive me." "Very well," said the ox. "Tomorrow I will go into the village and draw the 100 carts for you. You have always been a kind master until today. Tomorrow you shall gain what you lost." The next morning the owner fed the ox well, and hung a wreath of flowers about his neck. When they went into the village the men laughed at the man again. They said, "Did you come back to lose more money? Today I will pay 2,000 pieces of silver if my ox is not strong enough to pull the 100 carts," said the owner. So again the carts were placed in a line, and the ox was yoked to the first. A crowd came to watch again. The owner said, "Good ox, show how strong you are. You fine, fine creature." And he patted his neck and stroked his sides. At once the ox pulled with all his strength. The carts moved on until the last cart stood where the first had been. Then the crowd shouted, and they paid back the money the man had lost, saying, "Your ox is the strongest ox we ever saw." And the ox and the man went home, happy. 9. The Sandy Road. Once upon a time a merchant, with his goods packed in many carts, came to a desert. He was on his way to the country on the other side of the desert. The sun shone on the fine sand, making it as hot as the top of a stove. No man could walk on it in the sunlight. But at night, after the sun went down, the sand cooled, and then men could travel upon it. So the merchant waited until after dark, and then set out. Besides the goods that he was going to sell, he took jars of water and of rice and firewood, so that the rice could be cooked. All night long he and his men rode on and on. One man was the guide. He rode first, for he knew the stars, and by them he guided the drivers. At daybreak they stopped and camped. They unyoked the oxen and fed them. They built fires and cooked the rice. Then they spread a great covering over all the carts and the oxen, and the men lay down under it to rest until sunset. In the early evening, they again built fires and cooked rice. After supper, they folded the covering and put it away. They yoked the oxen, and, as soon as the sand was cool, they started again on their journey across the desert. Night after night, they traveled in this way, resting during the heat of the day. At last one morning the guide said, "In one more night we shall get out of the sand." The men were glad to hear this, for they were tired. After supper that night the merchant said, "You may as well throw away nearly all the water and the firewood. By tomorrow we shall be in the city. Yoke the oxen and start on." Then the guide took his place at the head of the line. But, instead of sitting up and guiding the drivers, he lay down in the wagon on the cushions. Soon he was fast asleep, because he had not slept for many nights, and the light had been so strong in the daytime that he had not slept well then. All night long, the oxen went on. Near daybreak, the guide awoke and looked at the last stars fading in the light. "Stop!" he called to the drivers. "We are in the same place where we were yesterday. The oxen must have turned about while I slept." They unyoked the oxen, but there was no water for them to drink. They had thrown away the water that was left the night before. So the men spread the covering over the carts, and the oxen lay down, tired and thirsty. The men, too, lay down saying, "The wood and water are gone, we are lost." But the merchant said to himself, "This is no time for me to sleep. I must find water. The oxen cannot go on if they do not have water to drink. The men must have water. They cannot cook the rice unless they have water. If I give up, we shall all be lost. There must be water somewhere below." On and on he walked, keeping close watch of the ground. At last he saw some grass. "There must be water somewhere below, or that grass would not be there," he said. He ran back, shouting to the men, "Bring the spade and the hammer." They jumped up and ran with him to the spot where the grass grew. They began to dig, and soon they struck a rock and could dig no further. Then the merchant jumped down into the hole they had dug, and put his ear to the rock. "I hear water running under this rock," he called to them. "We must not give up." Then the merchant came up out of the hole and said to one of his men, "My boy, if you give up we are lost. You go down and try." The boy stood up straight and raised the hammer high above his head. He hit the rock as hard as ever he could. He would not give in. They must be saved. Down came the hammer. This time the rock broke, and the boy had hardly time to get out of the well before it was full of cool water. The men drank as if they never could get enough, and then they watered the oxen and bathed. Then they built a fire and cooked their rice. Feeling better, they rested through the day. They set up a flag on the well for travelers to see. At sunset, they started on again, and the next morning they reached the city, where they sold the goods, and then returned home. 10. The Quarrel of the Quails. Once upon a time, many quails lived together in the forest. The wisest of them all was their leader. A man lived near the forest and earned his living by catching quails and selling them. Day after day he listened to the note of the leader calling the quails. At last, this man was able to call the quails together. Hearing the note, the quails thought it was the leader who called. When they were crowded together, the man threw his net over them, and off he went into the town, where he soon sold all the quails that he had caught. The wise leader saw the plan of the man for catching the quails. He called the birds to him and said, "This man is carrying away so many of us. We must put a stop to it. I have thought of a plan. The next time the man throws a net over you, each of you must put your head through one of the little holes in the net. Then all of you together must fly away to the nearest bush. You can leave the net on the bush and be free yourselves." The quails said that was a very good plan, and they would try it the next time the man threw the net over them. The very next day the man came and called them together. Then he threw the net over them. The quails lifted the net and flew away with it to the nearest bush. They left it there and flew back to the leader to tell him how well his plan had worked. The man was busy until evening getting his net off the bush, and he went home empty-handed. The next day the same thing happened, and the next. His wife was angry because he did not bring home any money, but the man said, "The fact is those quails are working together now. The moment my net is over them, off they fly with it, leaving it on a bush. As soon as the quails begin to quarrel I shall be able to catch them." Not long after this, one of the quails flying down on their feeding ground hit another's head by accident. "Who hit my head?" angrily cried the second. "I did, but I didn't mean to." "Don't be angry," said the first quail, but the second quail was angry and said bad words. Soon all the quails had taken part in this quarrel. When the man came that day he threw his net over them, and this time instead of flying off with it, one side said, "Now, you lift the net," and the other side said, "Lift it yourself." "You try to make us lift it all," said the quails on one side. "No, we don't," said the others. "You begin and we will help," but neither side began. So the quails quarreled, and while they were quarreling the man caught them all in his net. He took them to town and sold them for a good price. 11. The measure of rice. At one time a dishonest king had a man called the valuer in his court. The valuer set the price which ought to be paid for horses and elephants and the other animals. He also set the price on jewelry and gold and things of that kind. This man was honest and just, and set the proper price to be paid to the owners of the goods. The king was not pleased with this valuer, because he was honest. "If I had another sort of a man as valuer, I might gain more riches," he thought. One day the king saw a stupid miserly peasant come into the palace yard. The king sent for the fellow and asked him if he would like to be the valuer. The peasant said he would like the position. So the king made him valuer. He sent the honest valuer away from the palace. Then the peasant began to set the prices on horses and elephants, upon gold and jewels. He did not know their value, so he would say anything he liked. As the king had made him valuer, the people had to sell their goods for the price he set. Later, a horse dealer brought 500 horses to the court of this king. The valuer came and said they were worth only a measure of rice. So the king ordered the horse dealer to be given the measure of rice, and the horses to be put in the palace stables. The horse dealer went then to see the honest man who had been the valuer, and told him what had happened. "What shall I do?" asked the horse dealer. "I think you can give a present to the valuer which will make him do and say what you want him to do and say," said the man. "Go to him and give him a fine present, then say to him, 'You said the horses are worth a measure of rice, but now tell what a measure of rice is worth. Can you value that while standing in your place by the king?' If he says he can, go with him to the king, and I will be there, too." The horse dealer thought this was a good idea. So he took a fine present to the valuer, and said what the other man had told him to say. The valuer took the present, and said, "Yes, I can go before the king with you and tell what a measure of rice is worth. I can value that now." "Well, let us go at once," said the horse dealer. So they went before the king and his ministers in the palace. The horse dealer bowed down before the king, and said, "O king, I have learned that a measure of rice is the value of my 500 horses. But will the king be pleased to ask the valuer what is the value of the measure of rice?" The king, not knowing what had happened, asked, "Now, valuer, what are 500 horses worth?" "A measure of rice, O king," said he. "Very good, then. If 500 horses are worth a measure of rice, what is the measure of rice worth?" "The measure of rice is worth your whole city," replied the foolish fellow. The ministers clapped their hands, laughing, and saying, "What a foolish valuer! How can such a man hold that office? We used to think this great city was beyond price, but this man says it is worth only a measure of rice." Then the king was ashamed, and drove out the foolish fellow. "I try to please the king by setting a low price on the horses, and now see what has happened to me," said the valuer, as he ran away from the laughing crowd. 12. The Wise and the Foolish Merchant. Once upon a time in a certain country a thrifty merchant visited a great city and bought a great supply of goods. He loaded wagons with the goods, which he was going to sell as he traveled through the country. The stupid young merchant was buying goods in the same city. He, too, was going to sell what he bought as he traveled through the country. They were both ready to start at the same time. The thrifty merchant thought, "We cannot travel together, for the men will find it hard to get wood and water, and there will not be enough grass for so many oxen. Either he or I ought to go first." So he went to the young man and told him this, saying, "Will you go before or come on after me?" The other one thought, "It will be better for me to go first. I shall then travel on a road where the oxen will eat grass that has not been touched. The water will be clean. Also, I shall sell my goods at what price I like." So he said, "Friend, I will go on first." This answer pleased the thrifty merchant. He said to himself, "Those who go before will make the rough places smooth. The old grass will have been eaten by the oxen that have gone before, while my oxen will eat the new tender shoots. Those who go before will dig wells from which we shall drink. Then, too, I will not have to bother about setting prices, but I can sell my goods at the prices set by the other man." So he said aloud, "Very well, friend, you may go on first." At once the foolish merchant started on his journey. Soon he had left the city and was in the country. Later, he came to a desert which he had to cross. So he filled great water jars with water, loaded them into a large wagon and started across the desert. Now on the sands of this desert there lived a wicked demon. This demon saw the foolish young merchant coming and thought to himself, "If I can make him empty those water jars, soon I shall be able to defeat him." So the demon went further along the road and changed himself into a noble gentleman. He called up a beautiful carriage, drawn by white oxen. Then he called 10 other demons, dressed them like men and armed them with bows and arrows. Seated in his carriage, followed by the 10 demons, he rode back to meet the merchant. He put mud on the carriage wheels, hung water lilies and wet grasses upon the oxen and the carriage. Then he made the clothes the demons wore and their hair all wet. Drops of water came down over their faces, just as if they had all come through a stream. As the demons came near the foolish merchant they turned their carriage to one side of the way, saying pleasantly, "Where are you going?" The merchant replied, "We have come from the great city back there and are going across the desert to the villages beyond. You are covered with mud and carrying water lilies and grasses. Does it rain on the road you have come by? Did you come through a stream?" The demon answered, "The dark line across the sky is a forest. In it there are ponds full of water lilies. The rains come often. What have you in all those carts?" "Goods to be sold," replied the merchant. "But what do you carry in that last big heavy wagon?" the demon asked. "Jars full of water for the journey," answered the merchant. The demon said, "You have done well to bring water as far as this, but there is no need of it beyond. Empty out all that water and go on easily." Then he added, "But we have delayed too long. Drive on." And he drove on until he was out of sight of the merchant. Then he returned to his home with his followers to wait for the night to come. The foolish merchant did as the demon told him and emptied every jar, saving not even a cupful. On and on they traveled, but there was no forest. The dark line was only clouds, and no water was to be found. The men had no water to drink and no food to eat, for they had no water to cook their eyes, so they went thirsty and went to bed without supper. The oxen, too, were hungry and thirsty and dropped down to sleep here and there. Late at night the demons came and easily carried off every man. They drove the oxen on ahead of them, but they did not care to take away the loaded carts. A month and a half after this, the wise merchant followed over the same road. He, too, was met on the desert by the demon just as the other had been. But the wise man knew the man was a demon because he had no shadow. When the demon told him of the ponds and the forest ahead and advised him to throw away the water jars, the wise merchant replied, "We don't throw away the water we have until we get to a place where we see there is more." Then the demon drove on. But the men who were with the merchant said, "Sir, those men told us that that was the beginning of a great forest, and it was always raining there. Their clothes and hair were wet with water. Let us throw away the water jars and go on faster with lighter carts." Stopping all the carts, the wise merchant asked the men, "Have you ever heard anyone say that there was a lake or pond in this desert? You have lived near here always." "We never heard of a pond or lake," they said. "Does any man feel a wet wind blowing against him?" he asked. "No, sir," they answered. "Can you see a rain cloud, any of you?" said he. "No, sir, not one," they said. "Those fellows were not men, they were demons," said the wise merchant. They must have come out to make us throw away the water. Then when we were weak they might have put an end to us. Go on at once and don't throw away any water." He himself stood on guard with the head men. So they drove on, and before evening they came to the loaded wagons belonging to the foolish merchant. Then the thrifty merchant had his wagons drawn up in a circle. In the middle of the circle he had the oxen lie down, and also some of the men. He himself with the head men stood on guard, with swords in hand, and waited for the demons. But the demons did not bother them. Early the next day the thrifty merchant took the best of the wagons left by the foolish merchant, and went on safely to the city across the desert. There he sold all the goods, and returned with his men to his own city. 13. The Elephant Girly-Face. Once upon a time a king had an elephant named Girly-Face. The elephant was called Girly-Face because he was so gentle and good and looked so kind. Girly-Face never hurts anybody, the keeper of the elephants often said. Now one night some robbers came into the courtyard and sat on the ground just outside the store where Girly-Face slept. The talk of the robbers awoke Girly-Face. "This is the way to break into a house," they said. "Once inside the house, kill anyone who wakes up. A robber must not be afraid to kill. A robber must be cruel and have no pity. He must never be good, even for a moment." Girly-Face said to himself, "Those men are teaching me how I should act. I will be cruel. I will show no pity. I will not be good, not even for a moment." So the next morning when the keeper came to feed Girly-Face, he picked him up in his trunk and threw the poor keeper to the ground, killing him. Another keeper ran to see what the trouble was, and Girly-Face killed him, too. For days and days Girly-Face was so ugly that no one dared go near. The food was left for him, but no man would go near him. Later, the king heard of this and sent one of his wise men to find out what was the matter with Girly-Face. The wise man had known Girly-Face a long time. He looked the elephant over carefully and could find nothing that seemed to be the matter. He thought at last, Girly-Face must have heard some bad men talking. "Have there been any bad men talking about here?" asked the wise man. "Yes," one of the keepers said, "a band of robbers were caught here a few weeks ago. They had met in the yard to talk over their plans. They were talking together near the store where Girly-Face sleeps." So the wise man went back to the king and said, "I think Girly-Face has been listening to bad talk. If you will send some good men to talk where Girly-Face can hear them, I think he will be a good elephant once more." So that night the king sent some of the best men to sit and talk near the store where Girly-Face lived. They said to one another, "It is wrong to hurt anyone. It is wrong to kill. Everyone should be gentle and good. Now those men are teaching me," thought Girly-Face. "I must be gentle and good. I must hurt no one. I must not kill anyone." And from that time on, Girly-Face was a gentle and good elephant. 14. The Banyan Deer. There was once a deer the color of gold. His eyes were like round jewels, his horns were white as silver, his mouth was red like a flower, and his hoofs were bright and hard. He had a large body and a fine tail. He lived in a forest and was king of a herd of 500 banyan deer. Nearby lived another herd of deer, called the monkey deer. They, too, had a king. The king of that country was fond of hunting the deer and eating deer meat. He did not like to go alone, so he called the people of his town to go with him, day after day. The people did not like this, for while they were gone no one did their work. So they decided to make a park and drive the deer into it. Then the king could go into the park and hunt, and they could go on with their daily work. They made a park, planted grass in it and provided water for the deer, built a fence all around it, and drove the deer into it. Then they shut the gate and went to the king to tell him that in the park nearby, he could find all the deer he wanted. The king went at once, to look at the deer. First he saw there the 2 deer kings, and at once he decided not to kill them. He gave an order to all the people, that no one should kill the 2 beautiful deer. Then he looked at their great herds. Some days the king would go to hunt the deer, sometimes his cook would go. As soon as any of the deer saw them, they would shake with fear and run. But when they had been hit once or twice they would drop down dead. The king of the banyan deer sent for the king of the monkey deer and said, "Friend, many of the deer are being killed. Many are wounded besides those who are killed. After this, if we'll let one from my herd go up to be killed one day, and the next day we let one from your herd go up, then fewer deer will be lost." The monkey deer agreed. Each day the deer whose turn it was would go and lie down to be killed. The cook would come and carry off the one he found lying there. One day, it was the turn of a mother deer who had a young baby. She went to her king and said, "O king of the monkey deer, let the turn pass me by until my baby is old enough to get along without me. Then I will go and be killed." But the king did not help her. He told her that if it was her turn, she must die. Then she went to the king of the Banyan Deer and asked him to save her. "Go back to your herd. I will go in your place," said he. The next day the cook found the king of the Banyan Deer lying there. The cook went to the king, who came himself to find out about this. "King of the Banyan Deer, didn't I say that you should never be killed? Why are you lying here?" "Oh great king," said the king of the Banyan Deer, "a mother came with her young baby and told me that it was her turn to be killed. I could not ask anyone else to take her place, so I came myself." "King of the Banyan Deer, I never saw anyone so kind. Get up. I will set both you and her free. Nor will I hunt the deer in either park or forest any more." 15. The Princes and the Water Sprite. Once upon a time a king had 3 sons. The first was called Prince of the Stars. The next was called the Moon Prince, and the third was called the Sun Prince. The king was so very happy when the third son was born that he promised to give the queen anything she might ask for. On the 21st birthday of the Sun Prince, the queen said to the king, "Great king, when a youngest child was born you said you would give me anything I asked for. Now I ask you to give the kingdom to Sun Prince." But the king refused, saying that the kingdom must go to the oldest son, for it belonged by right to him. Next it would belong by right to the second son, and not until they were both dead could the kingdom go to the third son. The queen went away, but the king saw that she was not pleased with his answer. He feared that she would do harm to the older princes. So he called his elder sons and told them that they must go and live in the forest until his death. "Then come back and rule in the city that is yours by right," he said. And with tears he kissed them on the foreheads and sent them away. As they were going down out of the palace, after saying goodbye to their father, the Sun Prince called to them, "Where are you going?" And when he heard where they were going and why, he said, "I will go with you, my brothers." So off they started. They went on and at last they reached the forest. There they sat down to rest in the shade of a pond. Then the eldest brother said to Sun Prince, "Go down to the pond and bathe and drink. Then bring us a drink while we rest here." Now the king of the fairies had given this pond to a water sprite. The fairy king had said to the water sprite, "You are to have in your power over all who go down into the water, except those who give the right answer to one question. Those who give the right answer will not be in your power. The question is, what are the good fairies like?" When the Sun Prince went into the pond, the water sprite saw him and asked him the question, "What are the good fairies like?" "They are like the sun and the moon," said the Sun Prince. "You don't know what the good fairies are like," cried the water sprite, and he carried the poor boy down into his cave. Later, the eldest brother said, "Moon Prince, go down and see why our brother stays so long in the pond." As soon as the Moon Prince reached the water's edge, the water sprite called to him and said, "Tell me what the good fairies are like." "Like the sky above us," replied the Moon Prince. "You don't know either," said the water sprite, and dragged the Moon Prince down into the cave where the Sun Prince sat. "Something must have happened to those 2 brothers of mine," thought the eldest. So he went to the pond and saw the marks of the footsteps where his brothers had gone down into the water. Then he knew that a water sprite must live in that pond. He took his bow in his hand. The water sprite soon came along in the form of a woodcutter. "You seem tired, friend," he said to the prince. "Why don't you bathe in the lake and then lie on the bank and rest?" But the prince knew that it was a water sprite and he said, "You have carried off my brothers." "Yes," said the water sprite. "Why did you carry them off?" "Because they did not answer my question," said the water sprite, "and I have power over all who go down into the water, except those who give the right answer." "I will answer your question," said the eldest brother. And he did. The good fairies are pure in heart, and kind in word and deed. "Oh, wise prince, I will bring back to you one of your brothers." "Which shall I bring?" said the water sprite. "Bring me the younger one," said the prince. "It was because of him that our father sent us away. I could never go away with Moon Prince and leave poor Sun Prince here." "Oh, wise prince, you are kind. I will bring back both your brothers," said the water sprite. After that the three princes lived together in the forest until the king died. Then they went back to the palace. The eldest brother was made king, and he had his brothers rule with him. He also built a home for the water sprite in the palace grounds. 16. The King's White Elephant. Once upon a time, a number of carpenters lived on a riverbank near a large forest. Every day the carpenters went in boats to the forest to cut down the trees. One day, while they were at work, an elephant came limping on 3 feet to them. He held up one foot, and the carpenters saw that it was swollen and sore. Then the elephant lay down, and the men saw that there was a great splinter in the sore foot. They pulled it out and washed the sore carefully, so that in a short time it would be well again. Thankful for the cure, the elephant thought, "These carpenters have done so much for me. I must be useful to them." So after that, the elephant used to pull up trees for the carpenters. Sometimes when the trees were cut down he would roll the logs down to the river. Other times he brought their tools for them. And the carpenters used to feed him well morning, noon and night. Now this elephant had a son who was white all over, a beautiful, strong young one. The old elephant said to himself, "I will take my son to the place in the forest where I go to work each day, so that he may learn to help the carpenters, for I am no longer young and strong." So the old elephant told his son how the carpenters had taken good care of him when he was badly hurt and took him to them. The white elephant did as his father told him to do and helped the carpenters, and they fed him well. When the work was done at night the young elephant went to play in the river. The carpenter's children played with him, in the water and on the bank. He liked to pick them up in his trunk and set them on the high branches of the trees, and then let them climb down on his back. One day the king came down the river and saw this beautiful white elephant working for the carpenters. The king at once wanted the elephant for his own, and paid the carpenters a great price for him. Then with a last look at his playmates, the beautiful white elephant went on with the king. The king was proud of his new elephant, and took the best care of him, as long as he lived. 17. The Ox Who Envied the Pig. Once upon a time there was an ox named Big Red. He had a younger brother named Little Red. These two brothers did all the work on a large farm. Now the farmer had an only daughter and she was soon to be married. Her mother gave orders that the pig should be made fat for the wedding party. Little Red noticed that the pig was fed on nice food. He said to his brother, "How is it, Big Red, that you and I are given only grass to eat, while we do all the hard work on the farm? That lazy pig does nothing but eat the nice food the farmer gives him." His brother said, "My dear Little Red, do not envy him. That little pig is eating the food of death. He is being made fat for the wedding party. Eat your grass, be satisfied and live long." Not long afterwards the pig was killed and cooked for the wedding party. Then Big Red said, "Did you see, Little Red, what happened to the pig after all his fine feeding?" "Yes," said the little brother, "we can go on eating plain food for years, but the poor little pig ate the food of death, and now he is dead. His feed was good while it lasted, but it did not last long." 18. Granny's Blackie. Once upon a time a rich man gave a baby elephant to a woman. She took the best of care of this great baby, and soon became very fond of him. The children in the village called her Granny, and they called the elephant Granny's Blackie. The elephant carried the children on his back all over the village. They shared their goodies with him and he played with them. "Please, Blackie, give us a swing," they said to him almost every day. "Come on. Who is first?" Blackie answered and picked them up with his trunk, swung them high in the air, and then put them down again, carefully. But Blackie never did any work. He ate and slept, played with the children, and visited with Granny. One day Blackie wanted Granny to go off to the woods with him. "I can't go, Blackie, dear. I have too much work to do." Then Blackie looked at her and saw that she was growing old and weak. "I am young and strong," he thought. I'll see if I can find some work to do. If I could bring some money home to her, she would not have to work so hard. So early next morning, he started down to the river bank. There he found a man who was in great trouble. There was a long line of wagons so heavily loaded that the oxen could not draw them through the shallow water. When the man saw Blackie standing on the bank, he asked, "Who owns this elephant? I want to hire him to help my oxen pull these wagons across the river." A child standing nearby said, "That is Granny's Blackie." "Very well," said the man, "I'll pay 2 pieces of silver for each wagon this elephant draws across the river." Blackie was glad to hear this promise. He went into the river and drew one wagon after another across to the other side. Then he went up to the man for the money. The man counted out 1 piece of silver for each wagon. When Blackie saw that the man had counted out only 1 piece of silver for each wagon, instead of 2, he would not touch the money at all. He stood in the road and would not let the wagons pass him. The man tried to get Blackie out of the way, but not 1 step would he move. Then the man went back, counted out another piece of silver for each of the wagons, and put the silver in a bag tied around Blackie's neck. Then Blackie started for home, proud to think that he had a present for Granny. The children had missed Blackie and had asked Granny where he was, but she said she did not know where he had gone. They all looked for him, but it was nearly night before they heard him coming. "Where have you been, Blackie? And what is that around your neck?" the children cried, running to meet their playmate. But Blackie would not stop to talk with his playmates. He ran straight home to Granny. "Oh, Blackie," she said, "where have you been? What is in that bag?" And she took the bag off his neck. Blackie told her that he had earned some money for her. "Oh, Blackie, Blackie," said Granny, "how hard you must have worked to earn these pieces of silver. What a good Blackie you are." And after that Blackie did all the hard work and Granny rested, and they were both very happy. 19. The Crab and the Crane. Long ago, there was a summer when very little rain fell. All the animals suffered for want of water, but the fishes suffered most of all. In one pond full of fishes, the water was very low indeed. A crane sat on the bank watching the fishes. "What are you doing?" asked a little fish. "I am thinking about you fishes there in the pond. It is so nearly dry," answered the crane. "Yes," the crane went on, "I was wishing I might do something for you. I know of a pond in the deep woods where there is plenty of water." "I declare," said the little fish, "you are the first crane that ever offered to help a fish." "That may be," said the crane, "but the water is so low in your pond. I could easily carry you one by one on my back to that other pond, where there is plenty of water and food and cool shade." "I don't believe there is any such pond," said the little fish. "What you wish to do is to eat us, one by one." "If you don't believe me," said the crane, "send with me one of the fishes whom you can believe. I'll show him the pond and bring him back to tell you all about it." A big fish heard the crane and said, "I will go with you to see the pond. I may as well be eaten by the crane as to die here." So the crane put the big fish on his back and started for the deep woods. Soon the crane showed the big fish the pool of water. "See how cool and shady it is here," he said, "and how much larger the pond is, and how full it is." "Yes," said the big fish. "Take me back to the little pond, and I'll tell the other fishes all about it." So back they went. The fishes all wanted to go when they heard the big fish talk about the fine pond which he had seen. Then the crane picked up another fish and carried it away. Not to the pool, but into the woods where the other fishes could not see them. Then the crane put the fish down and ate it. The crane went back for another fish. He carried it to the same place in the woods and ate it, too. This he did until he had eaten all the fishes in the pond. The next day the crane went to the pond to see if he had left a fish. There was not one left, but there was a crab on the sand. "Little crab," said the crane, "would you let me take you to the fine pond in the deep woods where I took the fishes?" "But how could you carry me?" asked the crab. "Oh, easily," answered the crane. "I'll take you on my back as I did the fishes." "No, I thank you," said the crab. "I can't go that way. I am afraid you might drop me. If I could take hold of your neck with my claws, I would go." The crane did not like to have the crab hold on with his claws. But he was hungry, so he said, "Very well, hold tight." And off went the crane with the crab. When they reached the place where the crane had eaten the fishes, the crane said, "I think you can walk the rest of the way. Let go of my neck." "I see no pond," said the crab. "All I can see is a pile of fish bones." "Is that all that is left of the fishes?" "Yes," said the crane, "and if you will let go of my neck, your shell will be all that will be left of you." And the crane put his head down near the ground so that the crab could get off easily. But the crab cut through the crane's neck with his claws until his head fell off. "Not my shell, but your bones are left to dry with the bones of the fishes," said the crab. 20. The Brave Little Bowman. Once upon a time there was a little man with a crooked back. He was called the wise little bowman because he used his bow and arrow so very well. This crooked little man said to himself, "If I go to the king and ask him to let me join his army, he's sure to ask what a little man like me is good for. I must find some great big man who will take me as his servant and ask the king to take us." So the little bowman went about the city looking for a big man. One day he saw a big strong man digging a ditch. "What makes a fine big man like you do such work?" asked the little man. "I do this work because I can earn a living in no other way," said the big man. "Dig no more," said the bowman. "There is no such bowman as I am in this whole country, but no king would let me join his army because I'm such a little man. I want you to ask the king to let you join the army. He will take you because you are big and strong. I will do the work that you are given to do, and we will divide the pay. In this way we shall both earn a good living. Will you come with me and do as I tell you?" asked the little bowman. "Yes, I will go with you," said the big man. So together they set out to go to the king. At last, they came to the gates of the palace, and sent word to the king that a wonderful bowman was there. The king sent for the bowman to come before him. Both the big man and the little man went in and, bowing, stood before the king. The king looked at the big man and asked, "What brings you here?" "I want to be in your army," said the big man. "Who is the little man with you?" asked the king. "He is my servant," said the big man. "What pay do you want?" asked the king. 1,000 pieces a month for me and my servant, O king," said the big man. "I will take you and your servant," said the king. So the big man and the little bowman joined the king's army. Now in those days there was a tiger in the forest who had carried off many people. The king sent for the big man and told him to kill that tiger. The big man told the little bowman what the king said. They went into the forest together, and soon the little bowman shot the tiger. The king was glad, and gave the big man rich gifts and praised him. Another day word came that a buffalo was running up and down a certain road. The king told the big man to go and kill that buffalo. The big man and the little man went to the road, and soon the little man shot the buffalo. When they both went back to the king, he gave a bag of money to the big man. The king and all the people praised the big man, and so one day the big man said to the little man, "I can get on without you. Do you think there's no bowman but yourself?" And he said many other unkind things to the little man. But a few days later a king from a far country marched upon the city and sent a message to its king, saying, "Give up your country, or we will fight." The king at once sent his army. The big man was armed and got on a war elephant. But the little bowman knew that the big man could not shoot, so he took his bow and seated himself behind the big man. Then the war elephant, at the head of the army, went out of the city. At the first beat of the drums, the big man shook with fear. "Hold on tight," said the little bowman. "If you fall off now, you will be killed. You need not be afraid, I am here." But the big man was so afraid that he slipped down off the war elephant's back and ran back into the city. He did not stop until he reached his home. "And now to win," said the little bowman as he drove the war elephant into the fight. The army broke into the camp of the king that came from far away and drove him back to his own country. Then the little bowman led the army back into the city. The king and all the people called him the brave little bowman. The king made him the chief of the army and gave him rich gifts. 21. The Cunning Wolf. Once upon a time the people in a certain town went out into the woods for a holiday. They took baskets full of good things to eat. But at noon, they ate all the meat they had brought with them, not leaving any for supper. "I will get some fresh meat. We will make a fire here and roast it," said one of the men. So taking a club, he went to the lake where the animals came to drink. He lay down, with a club in his hand, and pretended to be dead. When the animals came down to the lake, they saw the man lying there and they watched him for some time. "That man is playing a trick on us, I believe," said the king of the wolves. "The rest of you stay here while I will see whether he is really dead, or whether he is pretending to be dead." Then the cunning king of the wolves crept up to the man and pulled at his club. At once the man pulled back on his club. Then the king of the wolves ran off, saying, "If you had been dead, you would not have pulled back on your club when I tried to pull it away. I see your trick. You pretend you are dead so that you may kill one of us for your supper." The man jumped up and threw his club at the king of the wolves. But he missed him. He looked for the other animals, but there was not one in sight. They had all run away. Then the man went back to his friends, saying, "I tried to get fresh meat by playing a trick on the animals, but the cunning wolf played a better trick on me, and I could not get one of them." 22. The Elephant and the Dog. Once upon a time a dog used to go into the stable where the king's elephant lived. At first the dog went there to get the food that was left after the elephant had finished eating. Day after day the dog went to the stable, waiting around for bits to eat. But later, the elephant and the dog became great friends. Then the elephant began to share his food with the dog, and they ate together. When the elephant slept, his friend the dog slept beside him. When the elephant felt like playing, he would catch the dog in his trunk and swing him back and forth. Neither the dog nor the elephant was quite happy unless the other was nearby. One day a farmer saw the dog and said to the elephant keeper, "I will buy that dog. He looks good-tempered, and I see that he is smart. How much do you want for the dog?" The elephant keeper did not care for the dog, and he did want some money just then. So he asked a fair price, and the farmer paid it and took the dog away to the country. The king's elephant missed the dog and did not care to eat when his friend was not there to share the food. When the time came for the elephant to bathe, he would not bathe. The next day again the elephant would not eat, and he would not bathe. The third day, when the elephant would neither eat nor bathe, the king was told about it. The king sent for his chief servant, saying, "Go to the stable and find out why the elephant is acting in this way." The chief servant went to the stable and looked the elephant all over. Then he said to the elephant keeper, "There seems to be nothing the matter with this elephant's body, but why does he look so sad? Has he lost a playmate?" "Yes," said the keeper, "there was a dog who ate and slept and played with the elephant. The dog went away 3 days ago. Do you know where the dog is now?" asked the chief servant. "No, I do not," said the keeper. Then the chief servant went back to the king and said, "The elephant is not sick, but he is lonely without his friend, the dog." "Where is the dog?" asked the king. "The elephant keeper says a farmer took him away," said the chief servant. "No one knows where the farmer lives." "Very well," said the king. "I will send word all over the country, asking the man who bought this dog to set him free. I will give him back as much as he paid for the dog." When the farmer who had bought the dog heard this, he set him free. The dog ran back as fast as he could go to the elephant's stable. The elephant was so glad to see the dog that he picked him up with his trunk and put him on his head. Then he put him down again. When the elephant keeper brought food, the elephant watched the dog as he ate, and then took his own food. All the rest of their lives the elephant and the dog lived together. 23. The Foolish Wolf. The lion jumped out from his den one day, looking north, west, south, and east. He saw a buffalo and went to kill him. The lion ate the buffalo, and then went down to the lake for a drink. As the lion turned to go toward his den for a nap, he came upon a hungry wolf. The wolf had no chance to get away, so he threw himself at the lion's feet. "What do you want?" the lion asked. "Oh, lion, let me be your servant," said the wolf. "Very well," said the lion, "serve me, and you shall have good food to eat." With this, the lion went into his den for his nap. When he woke up, the lion said to the wolf, "Each day you must go to the mountain top and see whether there are any elephants or buffaloes about. If you see any, come and tell me. Then I will kill and eat, and give part of the meat to you." So day after day the wolf climbed to the mountain top. Whenever he saw a buffalo or an elephant, he went back to the den, and falling at the lion's feet he said, "Great lion, food is in sight." Then the lion would jump out and kill the beast, sharing the meat with the wolf. Now this wolf had never had such fine meat to eat, nor so much. So as time went on, the wolf grew bigger and bigger, and stronger, until he was really proud of his great size and strength. "See how big and strong I am," he said to himself. "Why am I living day after day on food given me by another? I will kill for my own eating. I'll kill an elephant for myself." So the wolf went to the lion and said, "I want to eat an elephant of my own killing. Will you let me lie in your corner in the den, while you climb the mountain to look out for an elephant? Then when you see one, you come to the den and tell me. Then I will kill the elephant." The lion said, "Wolf, only lions can kill elephants. The world has never seen a wolf that could kill an elephant. Give up this idea of yours, and eat what I kill." But no matter what the lion said, the wolf would not give in. So at last the lion said, "Well, have your own way. Lie down in the den, and I will climb to the top of the mountain." When he saw an elephant, the lion went back to the mouth of the cave, and said, "Great wolf, food is in sight." Then from the den the wolf jumped out, ran to where the elephant was, and jumped at the elephant. But the wolf missed his aim, and fell down at the elephant's feet. The elephant raised his right foot and killed the wolf. 24. The Girl Monkey and the String of Pearls. One day the king went for a long walk in the woods. When he came back to his own garden, he sent for his family to come down to the lake for a swim. When they were all ready to go into the water, the queen and her ladies left their jewels with the servants, and then went down into the lake. As the queen put her string of pearls away in a box, she was watched by a girl monkey who sat in the branches of a tree nearby. This girl monkey wanted to get the queen's string of pearls, so she sat still and watched, hoping that the servant in charge of the pearls would go to sleep. At first the servant kept her eyes on the jewel box. But soon she began to nod, and then she fell fast asleep. As soon as the monkey saw this, she jumped quickly down, opened the box, picked up the string of pearls, and she was up in the tree again, holding the pearls very carefully. She put the string of pearls on, and then, for fear the guards in the garden would see the pearls, the monkey hid them in a hole in the tree. Then she sat nearby looking as if nothing had happened. Later, the servant awoke. She looked in the box, and finding that the string of pearls was not there, she cried, "A man has run off with the queen's string of pearls." Up ran the guards from every side. The servant said, "I sat right here beside the box where the queen put her string of pearls. I did not move from the place. But the day is hot, and I was tired. I must have fallen asleep. The pearls were gone when I awoke." The guards told the king that the pearls were gone. "Find the man who stole the pearls," said the king. Away went the guards looking everywhere for the thief. After the king had gone, the chief guard said to himself, "There is something strange here. These pearls were lost in the garden." There was a strong guard at the gates, so that no one from the outside could get into the garden. On the other hand, there are hundreds of monkeys here in the garden. Perhaps one of the girl monkeys took the string of pearls. Then the chief guard thought of a trick that would tell whether a girl monkey had taken the pearls. So he bought a number of strings of bright-colored glass beads. After dark that night the guards hung the strings of glass beads here and there on the low bushes in the garden. When the monkeys saw the strings of bright-colored beads the next morning, each monkey ran for a string. But the girl monkey who had taken the queen's string of pearls did not come down. She sat near the hole where she had hidden the pearls. The other monkeys were greatly pleased with their strings of beads. They talked to one another about them. "It is too bad you did not get one," they said to her as she sat quietly, saying nothing. At last she could stand it no longer. She put on the queen's string of pearls and came down, saying proudly, "You have only strings of glass beads. See my string of pearls." Then the chief of the guards, who had been hiding nearby, called the girl monkey. He took her at once to the king. "It was this girl monkey, your majesty, who took the pearls." The king was glad enough to get the pearls, but he asked the chief guard how he had found out who took them. The chief guard told the king that he knew no one could have come into the garden, and so he thought they must have been taken by one of the monkeys in the garden. Then he told the king about the trick he had played with the beads. "You are the right man in the right place," said the king, and he thanked the chief of the guards over and over again. 25. The Golden Goose. Once upon a time there was a goose who had beautiful golden feathers. Not far away from this goose lived a very poor woman who had 2 daughters. The goose saw that they had a hard time to get along, and said he to himself, "If I give them one after another of my golden feathers, the mother can sell them, and with the money they bring, she and her daughters can then live in comfort." So away flew the goose to the poor woman's house. Seeing the goose, the woman said, "Why do you come here? We have nothing to give you." "But I have something to give you," said the goose. "I will give my feathers, one by one, and you can sell them so that you and your daughters can live in comfort." So saying, the goose gave her one of his feathers, and then flew away. From time to time he came back, each time leaving another feather. The mother and her daughters sold the beautiful feathers for enough money to keep them in comfort. But one day the mother said to her daughters, "Let us not trust this goose. Someday he may fly away and never come back. Then we should be poor again. Let us get all of his feathers the very next time he comes." The daughters said, "This will hurt the goose. We will not do such a thing." But the mother was greedy. The next time the golden goose came, she took hold of him with both hands, and pulled out every one of his feathers. Now the golden goose has strange feathers. If his feathers are pulled out against his wish, they no longer remain golden, but turn white and are of no value. The new ones that come in are not golden, but plain white. As time went on, his feathers grew again, and then he flew away to his home and never came back again. 26. The Hawks and their friends. A family of hawks lived on an island in a lake not far from the great forest. On the northern shore of this lake lived a lion, king of beasts. On the eastern shore lived a kingfisher. On the southern shore of the lake lived a turtle. "Have you many friends near here?" the mother hawk asked the father hawk. "No, not one in this part of the forest," he said. "You must find some friends. We must have someone who can help us if ever we are in danger or in trouble," said the mother hawk. "With whom shall I make friends?" asked the father hawk. "With the kingfisher, who lives on the eastern shore, and with the lion on the north," said the mother hawk, "and with the turtle who lives on the southern shore of this lake." The father hawk did so. One day, men hunted in the great forest from morning until night, but found nothing. Not wishing to go home empty-handed, they went to the island to see what they could find there. "Let us stay here tonight," they said, "and see what we can find in the morning." So they made beds of leaves for themselves and lay down to sleep. They had made their beds under the tree in which the hawks had their nest. But the hunters could not go to sleep, because they were bothered by the flies and mosquitoes. At last the hunters got up and made a fire on the shore of the lake, so that the smoke would drive away the flies and mosquitoes. The smoke awoke the birds, and the young ones cried out. "Did you hear that?" said one of the hunters. "That was the cry of birds. They will do very well for a breakfast. There are young ones in that nest." And the hunters put more wood on the fire and made it burn up. Then the mother bird said to the father, "These men are planning to eat our young ones. We must ask our friends to save us. Go to the kingfisher and tell him what danger we are in." The father hawk flew quickly to the kingfisher's nest and woke him with his cry. "Why have you come?" asked the kingfisher. Then the father hawk told the kingfisher what the hunters planned to do. "Don't be afraid," said the kingfisher. "I will help you. Go back quickly and comfort your mate, and say that I am coming." So the father hawk flew back to his nest, and the kingfisher flew to the island and went into the lake near the place where the fire was burning. While the father hawk was away, one of the hunters had climbed up into the tree. Just as he came near the nest, the kingfisher, beating the water with his wings, threw water on the fire and put it out. Down came the hunter to make another fire. When it was burning well, he climbed the tree again. Once more the kingfisher put it out. Whenever fire was made, the kingfisher put it out. Midnight came and the kingfisher was now very tired. The mother hawk noticed this and said to her mate, "The kingfisher is tired out. Go and ask the turtle to help us so that the kingfisher may have a rest." The father hawk flew down and said, "Rest for a while, friend kingfisher, I will go and get the turtle." So the father hawk flew to the southern shore and wakened the turtle. "What has brought you here, friend?" asked the turtle. "Danger has come to us," said the father hawk, and he told the turtle about the hunters. "The kingfisher has been working for hours, and now he is very tired. That is why I have come to you." The turtle said, "I will help you at once." Then the turtle went to the island where the hawks lived. He dived into the water, collected some mud, and put out the fire with it. Then he lay still. The hunters cried, "Why should we bother to get the young hawks? Let us kill this turtle. He will make a fine breakfast for all of us. We must be careful or he will bite us. Let us throw a net over him and turn him over." They had no nets with them, so they tore their clothes into strings and made a net. But when they had put the net all over the turtle, they could not roll him over. Instead, the turtle suddenly dived down into the deep water. The men were so eager to get him that they did not let go of the net, so down they went into the water. As they came out they said, "Half the night, a kingfisher kept putting out our fires. Now we have torn our clothes and got all wet trying to get this turtle. We will build another fire, and at sunrise we will eat those young hawks." And they began to build another fire. The mother hawk heard them, and said to her mate, "Sooner or later these men will get our young. Do go and tell our friend the lion." At once the father hawk flew to the lion. "Why do you come at this hour of the night?" asked the lion. The hawk told him the whole story. The lion said, "I will come at once. You go back and comfort your mate and the young ones." Soon the lion came roaring. When the hunters heard the lion's roar they cried, "Now we shall all be killed." And away they ran as fast as they could go. When the lion came to the foot of the tree, not one of the hunters was to be seen. Then the kingfisher and the turtle came up, and the hawks said, "You have saved us. Friends in need are friends indeed." 27. The lion in bad company. One day a young lion came suddenly upon a wolf. The wolf was not able to get away, so he said to the lion, "Please, great lion, could you take me to your den, and let me live with you and your mate? I will work for you all my days." This young lion had been told by his father and mother not to make friends with any wolf. But when this wolf called him great lion, he said to himself, "This wolf is not bad. This wolf is not like other wolves." So he took the wolf to the den where he lived with his father and mother. Now this lion's father was a fine old lion, and he told his son that he did not like having this wolf there. But the young lion thought he knew better than his father, so the wolf stayed in the den. One day the wolf wanted horse flesh to eat, so he said to the young lion, "Sir, there is nothing we have not eaten except horse meat. Let us take a horse." "But where are their horses?" asked the lion. "There are small horses on the river bank," said the wolf. So the young lion went with the wolf to the river bank where the horses were bathing. The lion caught a small horse, and throwing it on his back, he ran back to his den. His father said, "My son, those horses belong to the king. Kings have many good bowmen. Lions do not live long who eat horses belonging to the king. Do not take another horse." But the young lion liked the taste of horse meat, and he caught and killed horse after horse. Soon the king heard that a lion was killing the horses when they went to bathe in the river. "Build a tank inside the town," said the king. "The lion will not get the horses there." But the lion killed the horses as they bathed in the tank. Then the king said the horses must be kept in the stables. But the lion went over the wall and killed the horses in their stables. At last the king called a bowman, who shot like lightning. "Do you think you can shoot this lion?" the king asked him. The bowman said that he was sure he could. "Very well," said the king, "take your place in the tower on the wall, and shoot him." So the bowman waited there in the tower. Shortly after, the lion and the wolf came to the wall. The wolf did not go over the wall, but waited to see what would happen. The lion jumped over the wall. Very soon he caught and killed a horse. Then the bowman let fly an arrow. The lion roared, "I am shot." Then the wolf said to himself, "The lion has been shot, and soon he will die. I will now go back to my old home in the woods." And so he did. The lion fell down dead. 28. The Otters and the Wolf. One day a wolf said to her mate, "I want to eat fresh fish." "I will go and get some for you," said he, and he went down to the river. There he saw 2 otters standing on the bank looking for fish. Soon one of the otters saw a great fish. He jumped into the water and caught hold of the tail of the fish. But the fish was strong and swam away, dragging the otter after him. "Come and help me," the otter called back to his friend. "This great fish will be enough for both of us." So the other otter went into the water. The 2 together were able to bring the fish to land. "Let us divide the fish into 2 parts." "I want the half with the head on," said one. "You cannot have that half." "That is mine," said the other. "You take the tail." The wolf heard the otters and he went up to them. Seeing the wolf, the otters said, "Master Wolf, this fish was caught by both of us together. We cannot agree about dividing him. Will you divide him for us?" The wolf cut off the tail and gave it to one, giving the head to the other. He took the large middle part for himself, saying to them, "You can eat the head and the tail without quarreling." And away he ran with the body of the fish. The otters stood and looked at each other. They had nothing to say, but each thought to himself that the wolf had run off with the best of the fish. The wolf was pleased and said to himself, as he ran toward home, "Now I have fresh fish for my mate." When his mate saw him coming, she came to meet him, saying, "How did you get fish? You live on land, not in the water." Then he told her of the quarrel of the otters. "I took the fish as pay for settling their quarrel," said he. 29. The Foolish Monkey. Once upon a time the king of a large and rich country gathered together his army to take a far-away little country. The king and his soldiers marched all morning long and then went into camp in the forest. When they fed the horses they gave them some peas to eat. One of the monkeys living in the forest saw the peas and jumped down to get some of them. After filling his mouth and hands with them, he went up into the tree again and sat down to eat the peas. As he sat there eating the peas, one pea fell from his hand to the ground. At once the greedy monkey dropped all the peas he had in his hands and ran down to hunt for the lost pea. But he could not find that one pea. He climbed up into his tree again and sat still looking very sad. "To get more, I threw away what I had," he said to himself. The king had watched the monkey, and he said to himself, "I will not be like this foolish monkey, who lost much to gain a little. I will go back to my own country and enjoy what I now have." So he and his men marched back home. 30. The Stolen Plow. At one time there were 2 traders who were great friends. One of them lived in a small village, and one lived in a large town nearby. One day the village trader took his plow to the large town to have it mended. Then he left it with the trader who lived there. After some time the town trader sold the plow and kept the money. When the trader from the village came to get his plow, the town trader said, "The mice have eaten your plow." "That is strange. How could mice eat such a thing?" said the village trader. That afternoon, when all the children went down to the river to go swimming, the village trader took the town trader's little son to the house of a friend, saying, "Please keep this little boy here until I come back for him." Later, the villager went back to the town trader's house. "Where is my son?" "He went away with you." "Why didn't you bring him back?" asked the town trader. "I took him with me and left him on the bank of that river while I went down into the water," said the villager. "While I was swimming about, a big bird seized your son and flew up into the air with him. I shouted, but I could not make the bird let go," he said. "That cannot be true," cried the town trader. "No bird could carry off a boy. I will go to the court, and you will have to go there and tell the judge." The villagers said, "As you please," and they both went to the court. The town trader said to the judge, "This fellow took my son with him to the river, and when I asked where the boy was, he said that a bird had carried him off." "What have you to say?" said the judge to the village trader. "I told the father that I took the boy with me, and that a bird had carried him off," said the village trader. "But where in the world are there birds strong enough to carry off boys?" said the judge. "I have a question to ask you," answered the village trader. "If birds cannot carry off boys, can mice eat plows?" "What do you mean by that?" asked the judge. "I left my good plow with this man. When I came for it, he told me that the mice had eaten it. If mice eat plows, then birds carry off boys, but if mice cannot do this, neither can birds carry off boys. This man says the mice ate my plow. The judge said to the town trader, give back the plow to this man, and he will give your son back to you. And the two traders went out of the court, and by evening, one had his son back again, and the other had his plow. 31. The Tricky Wolf and the Rats. Once upon a time a big rat lived in the forest, and many hundreds of other rats called him their chief. The Tricky Wolf saw this troop of rats, and began to plan how he could catch them. He wanted to eat them, but how was he to get them? At last he thought of a plan. He went to a corner near the home of the rats, and waited until he saw one of them coming. Then he stood up on his hind legs. The chief of the rats said to the wolf, "Wolf, why do you stand on your hind legs?" "Because I am lame," said the Tricky Wolf. "It hurts me to stand on my front legs." "And why do you keep your mouth open?" asked the rat. "I keep my mouth open, so that I may drink in all the air I can," said the wolf. "I live on air. It is my only food day after day. I cannot run or walk, so I stay here. I try not to complain." When the rats went away, the wolf lay down. The chief of the rats was sorry for the wolf, and he went each night and morning with all the other rats to talk with the wolf, who seemed so poor and who did not complain. Each time as the rats were leaving, the wolf caught and ate the last one. Then he wiped his lips and looked as if nothing had happened. Each night there were fewer rats at bedtime. Then they asked the chief of the rats what the trouble was. He could not be sure, but he thought the wolf was to blame. So the next day the chief said to the other rats, "You go first this time, and I will go last." They did so, and as the chief of the rats went by, the wolf jumped at him. But the wolf was not quick enough, and the chief of the rats got away. "So this is the food you eat. Your legs are not so lame as they were. You have played your last trick, wolf," said the chief of the rats, jumping at the wolf's throat. He bit the wolf, so that he died. And ever after, the rats lived happily in peace. 32. The Wise Goat and the Wolf. Once upon a time, many wild goats lived in a cave in the side of a hill. A wolf lived with his mate not far from this cave. Like all wolves, they liked the taste of goat meat. So they caught the goats, one after another, and ate them all but one who was wiser than all the others. Try as they might, the wolves could not catch her. One day the wolf said to his mate, "My dear, let us play a trick on that wise goat. I will lie down here pretending to be dead. You go alone to the cave where the goat lives, and looking very sad, say to her, 'My dear, do you see my mate lying there dead? I am so sad, I have no friends. Will you be good to me? Will you come and help me bury the body of my mate? The goat will be sorry for you, and I think she will come here with you. When she stands beside me, I will jump upon her and bite her in the neck. Then she will fall over dead, and we shall have good meat to eat.'" The wolf then lay down, and his mate went to the goat, saying what she had been told to say. But the wise goat said, "My dear, all my family and friends have been eaten by your mate. I am afraid to go one step with you. I am far safer here than I would be there." "Do not be afraid," said the wolf. "What harm can a dead wolf do to you?" These and many more words the wolf said to the goat, so that at last the goat said she would go with the wolf. But as they went up the hill side by side, the goat said to herself, "Who knows what will happen? How do I know the wolf is dead?" She said to the wolf, "I think it will be better if you go on in front of me." The wolf thought he heard them coming. He was hungry, and he raised up his head to see if he could see them. The goat saw him raise his head, and she turned and ran back to her cave. "Why did you raise your head when you were pretending to be dead?" the wolf asked her mate. Later, the wolves were both so hungry that the wolf asked his mate to try once more to catch the goat. This time the wolf went to the goat and said, "My friend, your coming helped us, for as soon as you came, my mate felt better. He is now very much better. Come and talk to him. Let us be friends and have a good time together." The wise goat thought, "These wicked wolves want to play another trick on me. But I have thought of a trick to play on them." So the goat said, "I will go to see your mate, and I will take my friends with me. You go back and get ready for us. Let us all have a good time together." Then the wolf was afraid, and she asked, "Who are the friends who will come with you? Tell me their names." The wise goat said, "I will bring the 2 dogs, and I will ask each of them to bring his mate." The wolf waited to hear no more. She turned, and away she ran back to her mate. The goat never saw either of them again. 33. The Woodpecker, Turtle, and Deer. Once upon a time a deer lived in a forest near a lake. Not far from the same lake, a woodpecker had a nest in the top of a tree, and in the lake lived a turtle. The 3 were friends, and lived together happily. A hunter, wandering about in the wood, saw the footprints of the deer near the edge of the lake. "I must trap the deer, going down into the water," he said. He set a strong trap of leather, and went his way. Early that night when the deer went down to drink, he was caught in the trap, and he cried out. At once the woodpecker flew down from her tree top, and the turtle came out of the water, to see what could be done. The woodpecker said to the turtle, "Friend, you have teeth. You bite through the leather trap. I will go and see to it that the hunter keeps away. If we both do our best, our friend will not lose his life." So the turtle began to bite the leather, and the woodpecker flew to the hunter's house. At dawn the hunter came, knife in hand, to the front door of his house. The woodpecker, flapping her wings, flew at the hunter, and struck him in the face. The hunter turned back into the house, and lay down for a little while. Then he rose up again, and took his knife. He said to himself, "When I went out by the front door, a bird flew in my face. Now I will go out by the back door." So he did. The woodpecker thought, "The hunter went out by the front door before, so now he will leave by the back door." So the woodpecker sat in a tree near the back door. When the hunter came out, the bird flew at him again, flapping her wings in the hunter's face. Then the hunter turned back and lay down again. When the sun arose, he took his knife and started out once more. This time the woodpecker flew back as fast as she could to her friends, crying, "Here comes the hunter." By this time the turtle had bitten through all the pieces of the trap but one. The leather was so hard that it made his teeth feel as if they would fall out. His mouth was all covered with blood. The deer heard the woodpecker, and saw the hunter, knife in hand, coming on. With a strong pull the deer broke this last piece of the trap, and ran into the woods. The woodpecker flew up to her nest in the tree top. But the turtle was so weak he could not get away. He lay where he was. The hunter picked him up, threw him into a bag, and tied it to a tree. The deer saw that the turtle was taken, and made up his mind to save his friend's life. So the deer let the hunter see him. The hunter seized his knife and started after the deer. The deer, keeping just out of his reach, led the hunter into the forest. When the deer saw that they had gone far into the forest, he slipped away from the hunter, and fast as the wind, he went by another way to where he had left the turtle. But the turtle was not there. The deer called, "Turtle, turtle." And the turtle called out, "Here I am in a bag hanging on this tree." Then the deer lifted the bag with his horns, and throwing it upon the ground, he tore the bag open, and let the turtle out. The woodpecker flew down from her nest, and the deer said to them, "You 2 friends saved my life, but if we stay here talking, the hunter will find us, and we may not get away. So you, friend woodpecker, fly away. And you, friend turtle, dive into the water. I will hide in the forest." The hunter did come back, but neither the deer, nor the turtle, nor the woodpecker was to be seen. He found his torn bag, and picking that up he went back to his home. The 3 friends lived together all the rest of their lives. 34. The Woodpecker and the Lion. One day while a lion was eating his dinner, a bone stuck in his throat. It hurt so that he could not finish his dinner. He walked up and down, roaring with pain. A woodpecker was sitting on a branch of a tree nearby, and hearing the lion, she said, "Friend, what's wrong with you?" The lion told the woodpecker what the matter was, and the woodpecker said, "I would take the bone out of your throat, friend, but I do not dare to put my head into your mouth, for fear I might never get it out again. I am afraid you might eat me." "Oh, woodpecker, do not be afraid," the lion said. "I will not eat you. Save my life if you can." "I will see what I can do for you," said the woodpecker. "Open your mouth wide." The lion did as he was told, but the woodpecker said to himself, Who knows what this lion will do? I think I will be careful." So the woodpecker put a stick between the lion's upper and lower jaws, so that he could not shut his mouth. Then the woodpecker hopped into the lion's mouth and pulled the bone out. The woodpecker hopped out of the lion's mouth and hit the stick, so that it too fell out. Then the lion could shut his mouth. At once the lion felt very much better, but not one word of thanks did he say to the woodpecker. One day later in the summer, the woodpecker said to the lion, "I want you to do something for me." "Do something for you," said the lion. "You mean you want me to do something more for you? I have already done a great deal for you. You cannot expect me to do anything more for you. Do not forget that once I had you in my mouth, and I let you go. That is all that you can ever expect me to do for you." The woodpecker said no more, but she kept away from the lion from that day on. 35. Prince Wicked and the Grateful Animals. Once upon a time a king had a son named Prince Wicked. He was cruel to everyone, both in the palace and out of it. His people said to one another, "If he acts this way, while he is a prince, how will he act when he is king?" One day when the prince was swimming in the river, suddenly a great storm came on, and it grew very dark. In the darkness the servants who were with the prince swam from him, saying to themselves, "Let us leave him alone in the river, and he may drown." When they reached the shore, some of the servants who had not gone into the river said, "Where is Prince Wicked?" "Isn't he here?" they asked. "Perhaps he came out of the river in the darkness and went home." Then the servants all went back to the palace. The king asked where his son was, and again the servants said, "Isn't he here, O king?" A great storm came on soon after we went into the water. It grew very dark. When we came out of the water the prince was not with us. At once the king had the gates thrown open. He and all his men searched up and down the banks of the river for the missing prince. But he could not be found anywhere. In the darkness, the prince had been swept down the river. He was crying for fear he would drown when he came across a log. He climbed upon the log and floated farther down the river. When the great storm arose, the water rushed into the homes of a rat and a snake who lived on the river bank. The rat and the snake swam out into the river and found the same log the prince had found. The snake climbed upon one end of the log, and the rat climbed upon the other. On the river's bank a tall tree grew, and a young parrot lived in its branches. The storm pulled up this tree, and it fell into the river. The heavy rain beat down the parrot when it tried to fly, and it could not go far. Looking down it saw the log, and flew down to rest. Now there were 4 on the log floating downstream together. Just around the bend in the river a certain poor man had built himself a hut. As he walked up and down late at night listening to the storm, he heard the loud cries of the prince. The poor man said to himself, "I must get that man out of the water. I must save his life." So he shouted, "I will save you. I will save you," as he swam out in the river. Soon he reached the log, and pushing it by one end, he soon pushed it into the bank. The prince jumped up and down. He was so glad to be safe and sound on dry land. Then the poor man saw the snake, the rat, and the parrot, and carried them to his hut. He built a fire, putting the animals near it, so they could get dry. He took care of them first, because they were the weaker, and afterwards he looked after the prince. Then the poor man brought food, and set it before them, looking after the animals first and the prince afterwards. This made the young prince angry, and he said to himself, "This poor man does not treat me like a prince. He takes care of the animals, before taking care of me." Then the prince began to hate the poor man. A few days later, when the prince, and the snake, the rat, and the parrot were rested, and the storm was all over, the snake said goodbye to the poor man with his words, "Father, you have been very kind to me. I know where there is some buried gold. If ever you want gold, you have only to come to my home and call, 'Snake,' and I will show you the buried gold. It shall all be yours." Next the rat said goodbye to the poor man. "If ever you want money," said the rat, "come to my home, and call out, 'Rat,' and I will show you where a great deal of money is buried near my home. It shall all be yours." Then the parrot came, saying, "Father, silver and gold have I none, but if you ever want the best rice, come to where I live and call, 'Parrot,' and I will call all my family and friends together, and we will gather the best rice in the fields for you." Last came the prince. In his heart he hated the poor man who had saved his life. But he pretended to be as thankful as the animals had been, saying, "Come to me when I am king, and I will give you great riches." So saying, he went away. Not long after this, the prince's father died, and Prince Wicked was made king. He was then very rich. Later, the poor man said to himself, "Each of the 4 whose lives are saved made a promise to me. I will see if they will keep their promises." First of all he went to the snake, and standing near his hole, the poor man called out, "Snake." At once the snake came out, and with great respect he said, "Father, in this place there is much gold. Dig it up, and take it all." "Very well," said the poor man. "When I need it, I will not forget." After visiting for a while, the poor man said goodbye to the snake, and went to where the rat lived, calling out, "Rat." The rat came at once, and did as the snake had done, showing the poor man where the money was buried. "When I need it, I will come for it," said the poor man. Going next to the parrot, he called out, "Parrot." And the bird flew down from the tree-top as soon as he heard the call. "Oh, father," said the parrot, "shall I call together all my family and friends to gather the best rice for you?" The poor man, seeing that the parrot was willing and ready to keep his promise, said, "I do not need rice now. If ever I do, I will not forget your offer." Last of all, the poor man went into the city where the king lived. The king, seated on his great white elephant, was riding through the city. The king saw the poor man, and said to himself, "That poor man has come to ask me for the great riches I promised to give him. I must have his head cut off before he can tell the people how he saved my life when I was the prince." So the king called his servants to him and said, "You see that poor man over there? Seize him and tie him up, beat him at every corner of the street as you march him out of the city, and then cut off his head." The servants had to obey their king. So they seized the poor man. They beat him at every corner of the street. The poor man did not cry out, but he said over and over again, "It is better to save poor weak animals than to save a prince." At last some wise men among the crowds along the street asked the poor man what prince he had saved. Then the poor man told the whole story, ending with the words, "By saving your king, I brought all this pain upon myself." The wise men and all the rest of the crowd cried out, "This poor man saved the life of our king, and now the king has ordered him to be killed. How can we be sure that he will not have any or all of us killed? Let us kill him." And in their anger they rushed from every side upon the king as he rode on his elephant, and with arrows and stones they killed him then and there. Then they made the poor man king, and let him rule over them. The poor man ruled his people well. One day he decided once more to try the snake, the rat, and the parrot. So, followed by many servants, the king went to where the snake lived. At the call of snake, out came the snake from his hole, saying, "Here, O king, is your treasure, take it." "I will," said the king, "and I want you to come with me." Then the king had his servants dig up the gold. Going to where the rat lived, the king called, "Rat." Out came the rat, and bowing low to the king, the rat said, "Take all the money buried here and have your servants carry it away." "I will," said the king, and he asked the rat to go with him and the snake. Then the king went to where the parrot lived, and called, "Parrot." The parrot flew down to the king's feet and said, "O king, shall I and my family and my friends gather the best rice for you?" "Not now, not until rice is needed," said the king. "Will you come with us?" The parrot was glad to join them. So with the gold, and the money, and with the snake, the rat, and the parrot as well, the king went back to the city. The king had the gold and the money hidden away in the palace. He had a tube of gold made for the snake to live in. He had a glass box made for the rat's home, and a cage of gold for the parrot. Each had the food he liked best of all to eat every day, and so these 4 lived happily all their lives. 36. Buried Treasure. Once upon a time, there was an old man who had a beautiful young wife. He had also a very good friend, who was very wise. The old man and his young wife had a son. The man loved his son very much. One day he thought, "I have learned that my beautiful young wife cannot always be trusted. When I die, I am sure she will marry another man, and together they will waste the wealth I have worked so hard for. Later on, there will be nothing left for my son. I will bury my wealth, to protect it for him." Then he called for his most faithful servant, Nanda. Together they took all the old man's wealth deep into the forest and buried it. He said, "My dear Nanda, I know you are faithful. After I die, you must give this treasure to my son. Keep it a secret until then. When you give the treasure to him, advise him to use it wisely and generously." Before long, the old man died. Several years later, his son completed his education and returned home. His mother said, "My son, your father has hidden his wealth. I am sure that his faithful servant, Nanda, knows where it is. You should ask him to show you. Then you can get married and support the whole family." So the son went to Nanda and asked him if he knew where his father had hidden his wealth. Nanda told him that the treasure was buried in the forest and that he knew the exact spot. Then the two of them took a basket and a shovel into the forest. When they arrived at the place where the treasure was buried, Nanda suddenly thought how important he was. Although he was only a servant, he was the only one to know the secret. So he became proud and thought he was better than the son. He said, "You son of a servant girl, where would you inherit a treasure from?" The patient son did not talk back to his father's servant. After a short time, they returned home empty-handed. This strange behavior happened 2 more times. The son thought, "At home, Nanda appears willing to show me the treasure. But when we go into the forest, he is no longer willing. I wonder why he changes his mind each time." He decided to ask his father's wise old friend for advice. He went to him and told him what had happened. The wise old man said, "Go again with Nanda into the forest. Watch where he stands when he abuses you. Then send him away saying, 'You have no right to speak to me that way. Leave me. Dig up the ground on that very spot, and you will find your treasure.' Nanda is a weak man. Therefore, when he comes closest to his bit of power, he turns it into abuse." The son followed this advice exactly. Sure enough, he found the buried treasure. As his father had hoped, he generously used the wealth for the benefit of many. 37. Bamboo's father. Once upon a time, there was a famous teacher who had 500 students. One of these 500 was a pet lover. In fact, he loved pets so much that there was no animal he did not wish to keep as a pet. One day he came upon a little poisonous snake who was searching for food. He decided he would make an excellent pet. So he made a little bamboo cage to keep him in when he had to leave him alone. The other students called the little snake Bamboo. Because he was so fond of his pet, they called the pet lover Bamboo's father. Before long, the teacher heard that one of his students was keeping a poisonous snake as a pet. He called him and asked if this was true. Bamboo's father said, "Yes, master, I love him like my own child." The wise teacher said, "It is not safe to live with a poisonous snake. Therefore, I advise you to let him go, for your own good." But Bamboo's father replied, "This little one is my son. He wouldn't bite me. I can't give him up and live all alone." The teacher warned him, "Then surely, this little one will be the death of you." But the student did not pay attention to his master's warning. Later on, all 500 of the teacher's students went on a trip to collect fresh fruits. Bamboo's father left his son in the bamboo cage. Since there were many fruits to collect, it was several days before they returned. Bamboo's father realized that poor Bamboo had not eaten the whole time he was away. So he opened the cage to let him out to find food. But when he reached inside, his son bit his hand. As he had not had any food all that time, Bamboo was hungry and angry. Since he was only a snake, he didn't know anything about poison. Within minutes, Bamboo's father died. 38. The Dancing Peacock. Once upon a time, a very long time ago, the 4-footed animals made the lion their king. There was a huge fish that swam in the oceans, and the fish made him their king. The birds loved beauty, so they chose the golden swan as their king. King Golden Swan had a beautiful golden daughter. His daughter wished that, when she was old enough, she could pick her own husband. When his daughter was old enough, King Golden Swan called all the birds together, so that he could find a worthy husband for his golden daughter. All kinds of birds came from far away, even from high Tibet. The gathering was held in a beautiful green land, and King Golden Swan told his lovely daughter to select a husband. She looked over the many birds. Her eye was attracted by a bright green long-necked peacock with beautiful flowing tail feathers. She told her father, "This bird, the peacock, will be my husband." Hearing that he was the lucky one, all the other birds crowded around the peacock to congratulate him. They said, "Even among so many beautiful birds, the Golden Swan Princess has chosen you. We congratulate you on your good fortune." The peacock became so full of pride that he began to show off his colorful feathers in a dance. He fanned out his tail feathers and danced in a circle to show off his beautiful tail. He was so proud that he pointed his head at the sky and forgot all modesty. The other birds, especially the young ones, laughed. But King Golden Swan was not amused. He was embarrassed to see his daughter's choice behave in this way. He thought, "This peacock has no shame." Standing before all the birds, the king said, "Sir Peacock, your voice is sweet, your feathers are beautiful, your neck shines, and your tail is like a splendid fan. But you have danced here like one who has no shame or fear. I will not permit my innocent daughter to marry such an ignorant fool." So the silly peacock flew away, having lost a beautiful wife. 39. The Mouse Merchant. Once upon a time, an important advisor to a certain king was on his way to a meeting with the king and other advisors. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a dead mouse by the roadside. He said to those who were with him, "Even from such small beginnings as this dead mouse, an energetic young fellow could build a fortune. If he worked hard and used his brains, he could start a business and support a wife and family." A passerby heard this. He knew this was a famous advisor to the king, so he decided to follow his words. He picked up the dead mouse by the tail and went off with it. Luckily, before he had gone even a block, a shopkeeper stopped him. He said, "My cat has been troubling me all morning. I'll give you 2 copper coins for that mouse." So it was done. With the 2 copper coins, he bought sweet cakes and waited by the side of the road with them and some water. As he expected, some people who picked flowers were returning from work. Since they were all hungry and thirsty, they agreed to buy sweet cakes and water for the price of a bunch of flowers from each of them. In the evening, the man sold the flowers in the city. With some of the money he bought more sweet cakes and returned the next day to sell to the flower pickers. This went on for a while, until one day there was a terrible storm, with heavy rains and high winds. While walking by the king's pleasure garden, he saw that many branches had been blown off the trees and were lying all around. So he offered to the king's gardener that he would clear it all away for him if he could keep the branches. The lazy gardener quickly agreed. The man found some children playing in a park across the street. They were glad to collect all the branches at the entrance to the pleasure garden for the price of just 1 sweet cake for each child. Along came the king's potter, who was always looking for firewood. When he saw the piles of wood the children had just collected, he paid the man a handsome price for it. He even gave him some of his pots. With his profits from selling the flowers and the firewood, the man opened up a refreshment shop. One day all the local grass mowers, who were on their way into town, stopped in his shop. He gave them free sweet cakes and drinks. They were surprised at his generosity and asked, "What can we do for you?" He said there was nothing for them to do now, but he would let them know in the future. A week later, he heard that a horse dealer was coming to the city with 500 horses to sell. So he got in touch with the grass mowers and told each of them to give him a bundle of grass. He told them not to sell any grass to the horse dealer until he had sold his. In this way he got a very good price. Time passed until one day, in his refreshment shop, some customers told him that a new ship from a foreign country had just arrived in the port. He saw this to be the chance he had been waiting for. He thought and thought until he came up with a good business plan. First, he went to a jeweler friend of his and paid a low price for a very valuable gold ring with a beautiful red ruby in it. He knew that the foreign ship was from a country that had no rubies of its own, where gold too was expensive. So he gave the wonderful ring to the captain of the ship. The captain agreed to send all his passengers to him. He would then lead them to the best shops in the city. In turn, the man got the merchants to pay him some money for sending customers to them. After several ships came into port, the man became very rich. Being pleased with his success, he also remembered that it had all started with the words of the king's wise advisor. So he decided to give him a gift of 100,000 gold coins. This was half his entire wealth. He met with the king's advisor and gave him the gift, along with his thanks. The advisor was surprised, and he asked, "How did you earn so much wealth?" The man told him it had all started with the advisor's own words not so long ago. They had led him to a dead mouse, a hungry cat, sweet cakes, bunches of flowers, storm-damaged tree branches, children in the park, the king's potter, a refreshment shop, grass for 500 horses, a golden ruby ring, good business contacts, and finally a large fortune. Hearing all this, the advisor thought to himself, it would not be good to lose the talents of such an energetic man. I too have much wealth, as well as my beloved only daughter. This man can marry her. Then he can inherit my wealth, and my daughter will be well cared for. This all happened, and after the wise advisor died, the one who had followed his advice became the richest man in the city. The king made him his advisor. Throughout his remaining life, he generously gave his money for the happiness of many people. 40. The Pigeon and the Crow. Once upon a time, the cook of a rich man kept a birdhouse near the kitchen. In it lived a gentle and careful pigeon. He was so gentle that he did not care to eat meat, and he was careful to keep his distance from the cook, for he knew the cook always roasted and boiled dead animals, even including birds. So the pigeon always left the birdhouse early in the morning. After spending the day finding and eating his food, he returned each night to sleep in the birdhouse. He was quite satisfied with his calm and harmless life. Nearby there was a crow who was quite different. For one thing, he would eat anything, and he was neither gentle nor careful. Instead, he often became too excited and acted without considering the danger. And instead of being satisfied, he often got himself into trouble. One day the crow smelled the delicious food being cooked in the rich man's kitchen. He was so attracted by the smell that he could not take his mind off it. He decided that he must have the rich man's meat at any cost. So he began trying to find a way to get some of the meat and fish. As usual, that evening the pigeon returned and entered his little home for the night. Seeing this, the hungry crow thought, "Ah, wonderful! I can make use of this pigeon to get delicious meat from the kitchen." The next morning, the crow followed the pigeon when he left for the day. The pigeon asked him, "Oh my friend, why are you following me?" The crow replied, "Sir, I like you very much, and I admire your calm and regular way of life. From now on, I would like to help you and learn from you." The pigeon said, "Friend Crow, your lifestyle is much more exciting than mine. You would get bored following me around, and you don't even eat the same food I do. So how can you help me?" The crow said, "When you go each day to find your food, we will separate, and I will find my food. In the evening, we will come back together. Being together, we will be able to help and protect each other." The pigeon said, "That sounds all right to me. Now go your own way and work hard finding food." The pigeon spent his usual day eating grass seeds. It took some time patiently searching for a few little grass seeds, but he was satisfied. The crow spent the day looking for worms and insects. This was fairly easy work, but he kept thinking it would be even easier to steal from the rich man's kitchen. And no doubt the food would be better too. When he was full, he went to the pigeon and said, "Sir Pigeon, you spend too much time searching for and eating food. It is no good wasting the whole day that way. Let us go home." But the pigeon kept on eating grass seeds, one by one. He was quite happy that way. At the end of the day, the impatient crow followed the pigeon back to his birdhouse. They slept in it together peacefully. They spent several days and nights in this way. Then one day, the cook bought many kinds of fresh meat and fish. He hung them on hooks in the kitchen. The crow saw this, and began thinking of a way to get it all for himself. He decided to pretend to be sick. The next morning, the pigeon was ready to go and look for food as usual. The crow said, "Go without me, Sir Pigeon, I have been sick to my stomach all night long." The pigeon replied, "My dear crow, that sounds so strange. I've never heard of a crow getting an upset stomach. but I have heard they sometimes faint from hunger. I suppose you want to eat up as much as you can of the meat and fish in the kitchen. But it's for people, not crows. And it would not be wise for you to eat people's food. It might even be dangerous. So come with me as usual, and be satisfied with crow food, Sir Crow." The crow said, "I'm too sick, friend Pigeon, I'm too sick. Go ahead without me." "Very well," said the pigeon, "but your actions will speak louder than your words. I warn you, don't get into trouble. Be patient until I return." Then the pigeon left for the day. But the crow paid no attention. He thought only about taking a big piece of fish, and was glad when the pigeon was gone. Let him eat grass seeds, he thought. Meanwhile, the cook prepared the meat and fish in a big stew pot. While it was cooking, he kept the lid slightly off, to allow the steam to escape. The crow smelled the delicious smell and the rising steam. Watching from the birdhouse, he saw the cook go outside to rest from the heat. The crow saw that this was the chance he'd been waiting for. So he flew into the kitchen and sat on the edge of the stew pot. First he looked for the biggest piece of fish he could find. Then he stuck his head inside and reached for it. But in doing so, he knocked the lid off. Hearing the noise, the cook ran into the kitchen at once. He saw the crow standing on the edge of the pot with a fish bigger than he was. Immediately, he closed the door and window of the kitchen. He thought, "This food is for the rich man. I work for him, not for some bad crow. I will teach him a lesson he'll never forget." The cook caught him and pulled out all his feathers. The poor crow looked ridiculous without his shining black feathers. Then the cook made a hot paste from ginger, salt and peppers. He rubbed it all over the crow's skin. Then he put him on the floor of the birdhouse and laughed. The crow sweated and suffered from the terrible burning pain. He cried all day long. In the evening, the pigeon returned from a quiet day searching for and eating grass seeds. He was shocked to see how his friend the crow looked. He said, "Obviously, you didn't listen to me at all. I'm so sad there's nothing I can do to save you. And I'm afraid to stay in this birdhouse so close to that cruel cook. I must leave at once." So the careful pigeon flew away in search of a safer birdhouse. And the crow died a painful death.